Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Game On. Jeff Taylor alongside Jack Taylor. This podcast is part of Bay Hackle Sports and high school hoops. Coming to an end. Kind of crazy, but a lot of just as we think about the upcoming weekend with some of the public schools playing their conference tournaments, the private schools, they'll play their state championship games. Some great games last night. When we say that, we mean
time of recording. It's Wednesday, so the games would have been Tuesday night.
Would have been Tuesday night, but some great games. So let's start. Let's hit the Southwestern 4A. And talk about a few of those. Independence, they get the bye, being the 1 seed. But I was at Catholic last night, and it was Charlotte Catholic. The first game I saw was them and Garinger. Not much of a game. The final score was 80-29. I was impressed with Catholic. However's in a tough spot, and that's across the board kind of. And I don't know. I hope they continue to go forward. And here's the cool part. I will tell you this. I was there. I watched that entire game, and they played their hearts out. They never quit. They never stopped. They never got down. It never got ugly. Which it could have in a heartbeat. So I give them kudos for that. It's just a tough.
It's what happens when you have these conference tournaments games. When everyone gets in.
Right.
And it's essentially the first round's extra.
But good, everybody's in. I don't like tournaments and you get more in college where certain teams are in, certain teams are out. If you're in a conference, you should be playing in the tournament.
It allows for anybody can win, and so there were some upsets, and we'll get to those later. But I think you're going to get when Catholic's hosting, they're home for that round, for the opening round, and so they've played that way all year. They've been dominant. They've had ups and downs, but that's a game that they're going to just kind of take care of business, move on to the next. And then there was Butler Rocky River as well.
Right, and that actually turned out to be a pretty good ball game. I had to leave at halftime to get to another game, but it was I think within 3 or 4 points. At the end of the first quarter, Rocky River was winning. So they came out, they played hard. I think the final was, I can't remember, but it was, I think, within 10. It was, Rocky River hung with them, and Butler, they looked impressive. The coach there, he's built a culture, they play hard, and so I think to see the Butler and Charlotte Catholic matchup. Wow.
It's a toss-up at this point. We've seen it time and time again this year.
Catholic's big in the middle.
They really are.
They have some height. So, and I know Butler has some pretty strong players. The way I watched Catholic play, the way they moved on offense, the ball movement was just impressive. Butler seemed to be a little more fly by the seat of your pants a little bit, if you know what I'm getting at.
They've got a big man too. They've got a pretty big guy, but he's on the younger side.
Right.
And so, actually, I can't remember what year he is, but it's gonna be, I think, dependent upon how the play in the paint goes, because when they don't, both of those teams drift to the outside and go for the 3-pointer.
Right.
A lot of the times.
Well, and I don't know how many threes Catholic hit to start the game. I think they went 4 for 5 to almost start the game from outside. And then, of course, if you're doing that, the inside game comes to life. So, it was interesting. And then, so that's one of the semifinals.
Yep, so that'll be one of the semifinals. We talked about these upsets. Providence over East Meck.
It's
a 4 and a 5, but still
an upset. And no, this is not nothing, bad to Providence. They haven't been real strong. Not in the hardwoods. So to see them get that win and get a chance to move on, it's a boost for the program.
Especially in this conference. They've struggled in this conference play. East Meck plays a lot up and down to its talent. We've seen them hang with Independence. We've seen them hang with, a lot of teams this year, but then we've also seen them play down to some other opponents that they take on. So
and what I've noticed in the teams that they've kind of played down with or whatever, they've never gotten out of the gate quick. And you give a lower seed a shot. And you
especially in a 4 and a 5.
Right. Which is kind of 50. But you know what I'm getting at. If you don't get off to a fast start, and you give a team you let them in and they stay in it. So kudos to Prov. For us it's kind of a we've got to be unbiased, but we like Prov. So kudos to them. But hey, you're running into the gauntlet now.
They got their work cut out for them against
Independence. But the cool part is this is why we play the games. And they got nothing to lose.
And there's always also the differing theories about, whether it's better to have played a game and then come in with that
Right,
momentum,
right.
or to get that extra rest, to have a game off, and then to have that bye. So getting to have that bye with as many should be interesting. So both of those games are going to be on Thursday, provided the weather doesn't
Mother
have any
Nature
impact.
doesn't wreak havoc.
On the day of recording Wednesday, CMS was closed, and a lot of the schools were closed. So
And there's supposed to be even a little more of a burst. They're saying tomorrow morning could be worse. Or, Thursday morning could be worse than today, Wednesday. So
it'll be interesting to see, because a lot of times they say, if school is closed or you don't have, I think it's like up to 5 or, majority of like half the school day, you can't have athletic events and the athletic facilities can't be open. So it's interesting to see how that will go. For the girls teams as well. So you had Butler Rocky River in the semifinals. That'll be a doubleheader for that game. And then for the girls, Providence beating Independence. They were the 3 seed in this bracket. So they're taking on the 2 seed in Charlotte Catholic.
Wow.
So that's going to be a pretty big game in there. And then I don't know who was Butler. Butler is the top seed in that, so they'll be playing Rocky River, and then Charlotte Catholic will be playing Providence for the girls' games. Now there were a couple other semifinal games going on, quarterfinal games setting up. So in the South. South Mech, yeah, that's the one with. I always get it confused.
Southwestern and South Mech, I get confused.
So for the boys, you had a huge shocker. Barry Academy, the 6 seed, taking down Audrey Kell, the 3 seed.
Yeah, that one just, Coach Kraft at AK, he's built a winner. And that team shows
the other
up
Mike Kraft.
Yeah, the other Mike Kraft. But, that one shocked me. That one, because I watched Barry play a couple of times this year, and, they played well, but I didn't think that was going to happen at all. And they beat them. I think I'm going to be honest with you,
10.
watching social media and some of the updates, I think they led wire to wire, which is kind of interesting. So, to beat them by 10, that's kudos to Barry. That's a shocker.
So they'll be taking on South Mech in the boys semifinal for one of the first semifinals. That's on Thursday. And then the other side, Myers Park got a huge win at the very end of the regular season over South Mech to claim the conference title.
Which it was, And if we'll move on in a minute, but we hadn't talked a whole lot about Myers Park.
They haven't had a whole lot to talk about.
Right. And their first year without Coach Taylor around and stuff, he went over to Ambassador Christian.
Huge gauntlet of their non-conference schedule.
Right, exactly. And they didn't start off, lighting it up. So I will be honest, I didn't know that they were that. I didn't know they had won it.
They rallied a lot later half of the season. They get the number 1 seed. Of course, that we talk about it. Audrey Kell was the 3 seed, which was a shocker there in that one. You had other teams, like you said, it was interesting to see them come through in the boys semifinals. But then you're going to have...
So Myers Park plays Barry.
No, Myers Park will play Olympic.
Olympic,
Barry will play South Mech.
Barry plays South Mech. Got
South
it.
Mech. I have to find... I lost the sheet that had the seating on it. But, yeah, it was... So that's going to be good games. And it's at Myers Park.
Right.
So they'll have the home crowd. The home crowd gets after it. And then for the girls... You've got we couldn't find the winner of South Mech Barry for that game. Either way, they're playing Myers Park.
Right.
And then Audrey Kell for the girls' side did keep the win. They'll be playing Olympic.
Okay.
So that'll be the 1 versus Olympic. And those games are going to be on Thursday, with the then finals being on Friday. So that takes care of that conference. And then we also had, I think that was the end of the quarterfinals or the semifinals, and then you get into the finals. So we already had Tuesday was the semifinals for the Queen City 3A 4A.
Right.
So then for the guys games, no shock here. North Mech Chambers go chalk.
Right.
It was not very surprising there. North Mech dominating over they dominate Mallard Creek, and then Chambers had a pretty close game with Hopewell.
Right.
Which Hopewell's a really good team too. Right. So that was a close one. So that will be on Friday. And then for the girls, same thing. North Mech sweeps it. They'll be taking on Mallard Creek. No shocker there.
Right.
For those games. Then you look on to, as we get down, we go into the Greater Metro 4A. Here's where you had some shakeups.
This was some shockers.
So for the Greater Metro 4A, for the men, Lake Norman, no real surprise there. But it was against for the guys. It was it was Hickory Ridge over Mooresville,
right?
Which was a
That's
huge
the
game.
shocker.
So Hickory Ridge getting to the finals. I saw them take on Independence at the beginning of the year and ran Independence down to the very wire. So waited to see it from Hickory Ridge.
Right.
I've seen them a couple times, so that was not. I wasn't, but Mooresville had seemed like they had been lighting it up, firing on all cylinders.
Right.
Everyone was thinking that rematch between Hickory Ridge and Lake Norman was going to be there for the guys' final game, so that was huge. And then it's going to be a doubleheader because the Lake Norman girls and the Hickory Ridge girls will be playing the game right beforehand, as the Hickory Ridge girls went on to beat the winner to beat Cox Mill.
Right.
And so they'll be taking on. So it'll be a doubleheader: Lake Norman versus Hickory Ridge. So that'll be a pretty exciting night for those two teams.
And as you've read a lot of these, even a lot of the conference tournaments, it's been cool to see the same guys and girls from a lot of schools move on. We talk about Providence, you talk about Olympic,
North Mac.
Right. You talk about these
Lake Norman.
these schools that have both teams kind of moving on in the postseason. You always love to see that.
Yeah. And then finishing out last with the Southern Carolina. We're talking. There's so many to get to, so we're gonna stick to the 4A just for time purposes. You've got Marvin Ridge up against Weddington for the girls' final, and then Cuthbertson versus Weddington for the boys' final. Marvin Ridge, or for the girls, Marvin Ridge and Porter Ridge were neck and neck in the rankings, and so that was a big shocker. Not a shocker per se, because Marvin Ridge had the hold over them, but they won by I think 20 points, which was really a big surprise. Cuthbertson getting the win over Marvin Ridge was a big upset too,
right?
Because Marvin Ridge was coming in there at the 2 seed, and everyone thought it was going to be Marvin Ridge Weddington for the guys' final. Cuthbertson gets the upset, so it'll be Marvin Ridge or Weddington versus Cuthbertson. Those are going to be on Friday. Now, of course, that's all, dependent upon the weather holding up.
Right.
Seeing how, because they've already pushed back the seeding. It was going to get the tournament seeds were going to be on Saturday. Now they're not going to be till Sunday.
They wanted to give everybody a chance just in case.
In case these games, because you imagine that if say Thursdays, because if Friday's fine, then these championship games will be fine.
Right.
But if Thursday's not, then these teams that are playing on Thursday for their semifinals and then Friday for their finals, they'll have to push back to where Friday's their semifinals and then semifinals are finals on Saturday. Which I'm really hoping doesn't happen, because we've got a slew of state championship games on Saturday for public or for private schools.
And I'm not here.
No, you are not. You were in Daytona, so you get a break. You get some time off, some much needed, much deserved time off. But
yeah, so we get to the state title games for the private schools.
Yep. So for the day before recording this podcast for the semifinals, I went out to a couple games. So did you. I went out started out a doubleheader at Concord. We saw them lose at Carmel Christian. We saw them handle, some teams down the slate. They've been dominant for both men and women. Men, they're in the 1 seed for the 3A women. I believe they were at the 2 seed for the women. And so trying to go, the women won in 2023. The men were runners up in 2023. That was the last time either one of their programs had made it to the state championship for basketball. So trying to, it hasn't been long.
Right.
It hasn't been long, and some of those players still remember what it was like. But I started out, the girls were taking on Greensboro Day School, and were losing at halftime.
Oh, really?
They were down by a couple points at halftime, but I got to tell you, they rallied in the second half. They won by 5. So they're going to be taking on they're the first game of the day.
Okay.
All the girls' games, except for I think one, are at Charlotte Latin. So that's going to be at noon at Charlotte Latin. They take on the top seed in Grace Christian.
Okay.
And then I'll get.
Do you know what Grace Christian is? Is that here in Charlotte, or?
I think it is. I have to double check on that.
We can double check that.
There's a couple ones with these private schools, y'all. It's hard because they don't all the public schools have names for the most part, so but and some of them are easy, like Gaston Christian, Gaston County, Greensboro Day, Greensboro, but Victory Christian, Trinity Christian,
Ambassador Christian, yeah.
Where are you? Where do you exist? I don't know where you are, and so that's like Victory Christian. I didn't know, and I apologize, Victory Christian.
And we're not being mean. We're just
when you especially when you only do. It's different when you only field basketball teams too. If you don't have a football team, we don't have the.
We've already been there. We know what these schools are.
Yeah,
right.
It's different than Charlotte Latin, Providence Day, Covenant Day, the ones that field football teams. Okay, I'm gonna go there.
Right.
So it's definitely a bit more searching for that. But then I went for the guy. I'll go to the girls first. So then went out to Cannon as well. Defending champs.
Yep. Strong program.
Yeah. Took on Raymond Gap, and it was nothing to it. They're dominant. They were up, I think, 20-8 when I left because I had to get out to my third game. So they have the chance to get their back-to-back. They're going to be taking on. Let me see if I can find it. They're going to be taking on. I just had it. Oh, here it is. They're going to be taking on Wesleyan Christian at Charlotte Latin at 3:00.
Okay.
So that'll be the next game at Latin right after right after that noon game at Latin.
Right.
So that'll be about 2 big games back to back for the area. And then lastly for me, I'll go as we go to the guys. So then I saw Concord Academy boys. Like I said, they've been up and down, had seen some close losses, some tough losses, seen some big wins. And so they were rolling. They were neck and neck
Right.
with Gaston Christian, who Gaston Christian has a huge guy up in the paint. They've got shooters too, and I've seen Gaston Christian. We saw him at the MLK Day tournament. They've had some dominant play, and the biggest thing for Concord is they were going way too fast. They were really trying to force it. There's no shot clock in high school basketball,
Right.
so you can take your time. And they were really just unnecessary shots.
Right.
Not taking the highest percentage shots. And they've got a huge guy in the post from Poland, I think.
Right.
Alex Kornacki, and he's ginormous, and he's nimble too. And so they weren't really using him. They've got some shooters on the outside, but they kept turning the ball over, and that allowed Gaston Christian to keep ping pong in the lead. And then there was the turning point was when their point guard drove in, got a layup, got the and one. That tied the game.
Right.
And I thought they were going to take away. There was a technical foul, so they got 4 shots. It was a technical foul on a shooting foul, so they gave them 4 shots. They were down by 2 at this point in time. Between 2 players, they made 1 of them. But the crazy part is that the guy who missed his 2 technical free throw or his shooting free throws, he missed 2. He at the very end, as soon as they started to get on a little run, they had a small lead. They kept fouling him. And he sank every one.
He drained him.
And their head coach was pissed because he didn't pass the ball out. He held on to it, so they foul him, and he's got to take the shots. He's their center, their big man. He drains every one.
Right.
So they win. They're going back.
You figure he'd missed those.
You thought he might.
Right.
He missed.
He got in his
He
head.
missed 2, but no. He kissed his finger, pointed up every single time. He looked at the crowd on the other side because it was a packed crowd. Gaston Christian traveled really well. So they'll be playing. Their game is at 4:00 at Providence Day. They're taking on Greensboro Day.
Right.
So that'll be a big one. And then you had another big game too.
Might have been
the game of the night.
Might have been the game of the year.
It might have been.
I was I'd been over at Charlotte Catholic, so I got to the Providence Day Carmel Christian, and got there before the game started, whatever. So I saw the whole game. I was worn out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I don't know that the lead was more than 3 for either team. But then, of course, the end of the game, there's a minute to go, less than a minute to go. Carmel Christian's down 3.
Bryce Slay.
Yeah, thank you. Bryce Slay, comes up with a steal or whatever,
Off the inbound.
Off the inbound, gets it, drives to the bucket, makes the layup, gets fouled, drains it. So now there's 30 seconds to go. PD has the last shot. One real good shot. And sometimes I think teams, it was 30 seconds to go, but they started running the offense with 8 seconds.
Sheesh.
And I don't ever,
You don't want to give them the other chance.
I know, but, give yourself some offense to get going. You know what I'm getting at?
To try one or
but
two
that's
times.
what everybody does.
Yeah.
Watch the pros, watch college. You have one player, 10 seconds,
Yeah.
and then they go.
And especially without a shot clock, you
Right.
can take your sweet time.
Well, and during that game, and they only play 8-minute quarters. They only play 8-minute quarters in the private schools.
I guess they do, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, it wasn't that game.
No, yeah, I guess
So
they do.
there was 8-minute quarters.
I don't even notice it now anymore.
So, well, I know, but I did to a point because I'm like, I looked up at one point and there was 3 minutes to go in the quarter. I'm like, wait a minute, what
That's
the
true.
heck?
I didn't think about
So-
that at my Concord. I'm like, these games are going pretty fast.
Right.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, the first half took 24 minutes or something.
Because I was at
It
Concord the whole
crazy.
time. Yeah, that's.
Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
just,
no.
But you're talking about that or whatever. I don't know if it was the defensive play. The defense was so tough, but both teams were taking 45 seconds to score because I thought that game would have been a shootout,
Yeah.
in terms of that. But it was 48-all at the end of regulation.
Well, and I noticed it for the first time too, Cannon and Rabun Gap, and I don't know if this is a strategy that some teams are employing, but I noticed this in West Virginia when I was there. They don't have a shot clock either, and it's not a national thing. Some states do have shot clocks.
Right.
It's very few states, I think, that don't have shot clocks for
Right.
high school basketball. And Rabun Gap, in the first quarter, 2 minutes left, and they're down by maybe 10 at this point.
Right.
2 minutes left in the first quarter. And like the point guard.
They play four corners like Dean Smith used to do. Where
the point guard, she picked the ball up in her elbow and just stood there at the 2-minute mark.
But don't you have to move forward 5 seconds or something, or no?
Not once you cross.
Oh,
She had crossed the line. She was in the offensive zone.
Wow.
And so she just stood there
Yeah.
for like a good 30 seconds. And it was crazy.
Well,
and so I don't know if that's a strategy that some teams have employed now to take advantage of the fact that there is no shot clock.
Well,
but
there was one point in that game that a guy I was standing beside was talking to me, and at the end, when there was like 2 minutes to go in regulation, and PD had the ball and was up 1.
yeah, hold it.
The guy was like, just hold it for 2 minutes.
I mean,
and I'm like sitting there going, they're not going to do that. And they didn't, because they ended up getting the bucket going up by 3.
yeah.
So we go to overtime. And let me just say, yeah, packed house at Carmel Christian.
It always is.
I mean, those two schools showed up.
and it's a huge gym.
Right. It's a great gym.
It's an amazing
It's
gym.
an amazing gym. But the interesting part was when you went to second overtime, of course, Providence Day, they hit a 3. So there's 3 seconds to go.
In the first overtime.
At the end of the first overtime, yeah. 3 seconds to go. So you're like, Carmel Christian's got to go the length of the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, it was like 3.5. Let me take
No
that back.
timeouts.
3.5, they had one timeout. Carmel Christian did. So 3.5, they had one timeout. So what they did was they literally threw the ball to half court,
From baseline to half court.
and the kid caught it and immediately called timeout.
Yeah.
So it went from 3.5 to 3. So now you got the ball at half court with 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So the guy, we showed it on the highlights last night, and you go to our social media and go to our website and check it out because you ran the highlights last night. You saw it, the baseball throw to Bryce Slate in the corner, who somehow or another catches it, steps forward, steps back, drains the 3 from the baseline in the corner.
Send it to second overtime.
But it was like, I mean, they're smooth and then they're smooth.
Yeah.
And I mean, as soon as he let it go, he knew. He knew it was going in.
He might be the best all-around player in the state right now.
I would, yes.
If not private school, definitely, if not all, definitely private school. I mean from what I've watched.
The offensive side, the defensive side of the ball, but I mean, when he hit that shot, it was just, to get the steal, to get the layup, to get the foul, to send it to overtime, then to hit that 3.
Yeah.
With 3 seconds, I'm like, it's over. There's no way.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in the second overtime, Carmel Christian gets it. I mean,
The dam's
Carmel Christian
going
gets it
to
done.
break at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
But even then, and it did play a little bit where Carmel Christian was up like 5.
Yeah.
And they played 4-minute overtime.
Yeah.
They were up with like 2.5 minutes to go, and they took a good minute and a half off the clock before they shot a ball.
I mean, I wouldn't be at that point.
I mean, you're up 5. You didn't have to shoot at all.
And if there's no rule for it, then why not take advantage?
I mean, so it's interesting. The whole shot clock in high school is a completely different topic, but I did see a lot of playing last night where it took them a minute to get, a minute to shoot the ball.
So Concord Academy for the guys side, they would, and even at the end there when they were trying to keep a lead or get the lead, they were driving and shooting immediately, and I'm like, okay, you can slow down a little bit. Going back to Carmel Christian, because that's going to be a huge game. They'll play Christ School, so that's the number 1 seed, and so they hadn't played. They lost to Providence Day last year in the quarterfinals. They hadn't seen each other since.
Right.
So that was a huge matchup.
Right.
Tamar Slay, the former Charlotte Bobcat. The former Marshall Thundering Herd basketball player, his son committed to play at his father's alma mater. That's obviously his son, the head coach for Carmel Christian being Tamar Slay. And they've gone on huge runs. So that's going to be a pretty interesting game. That'll be the last game of the day. But then there's also Victory Christian for the 1A. It's interesting because once you get to basketball for the private schools, they do have 4A.
Right.
But so Victory Christian is in Charlotte. This is one of those teams that I wasn't aware of.
Right.
They'll be playing a doubleheader. Get this, basically.
Okay.
At 1:00, the girls play. They're the 1 seed. The girls play the 2 seed in Crossroads Christian.
Okay.
The guys at Latin at 6:00. The guys are the 1 seed. They play the 3 seeds Crossroads Christian.
Wow.
So you'll have a doubleheader in the 1A. So it's the 1A for both boys and girls. It's either going to be Victory Christian or Crossroads Christian.
Wow.
So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 6 state championship games on Saturday for the NCI NCISAA.
Right.
So that's
Wow.
where I'm saying, and I'm going to try to get out to as many of them as I can, going from Latin to Providence Day, Latin to Providence Day, Latin to Providence Day.
So
So those should be some good ones, and hopefully the roads are clear and good, and
Yeah,
the
hopefully
snow
the
doesn't,
weather
any weather
doesn't wreak havoc.
doesn't wreak havoc and move a lot of games to Saturday.
Back to Christ School real quick. Coach Coley.
Yeah, Christ
who's-
School's been dominant too.
Get this though. He's so back to back. He's now playing back to back state championship
Yeah.
games. He lost 9 seniors.
Wow, that's crazy. And they lost to
This tweet. It's time to give Coach Coley his well-deserved flowers. Back-to-back NCISA 4A state championship appearance. Lost 9 seniors,
wow,
and yet here he is again, right back in the state for a championship game. That's
insane.
that's crazy.
That's insane.
I mean, you lose 9 seniors, and you
On a basketball team, it's
Yes.
one thing to lose 9. It's hard to lose 9 seniors on a football team.
Right.
You lose 9 seniors on a basketball. The fact that he had 9
Right,
seniors
no, right.
on his basketball team is crazy in and of itself. But
major props there. That's crazy.
yeah, and Christ School has had, like you said, they've had that success.
Yeah.
And they've been able to come back around, and they're going to try to go those back to back. I'm trying to look to see. I believe. What was it? They beat Providence Day last year
To win it?
to win it. So
Got
they're the defending champs.
Yeah.
So Carmel Christian's got its work cut out for them. They
That's
were
going to be a heck of a ball game.
they were the 3 seed last year to beat Providence Day, the 5 seed in the state championship.
What
So
if
this year they're the 1 seed, Carmel Christian being, I believe.
I didn't feel bad for Providence today because you had your chance to play at home.
Well, and this
to
is
play the state
thing.
championship
Yeah,
there.
and that's what you do. When you have these which I like that setting. I like it. The public schools do it for the conference tournaments, and I believe they're going to do it up until the semifinal games, is
Yeah.
what it was. I kind of like that, to be honest. Not going. They do it in football. They do it
Right.
everywhere else.
Right.
It is cool for basketball to see the public schools in the triangle. But when it works out or not because of their college basketball. But I think it'll be cool to see, and it's the risk you run.
Yeah.
You for Providence and Latin, because Latin didn't have either teams make it that far. Providence Day, of course, had 2 chances. Providence Day women did lose to Wesleyan Christian, I believe is who they lost to. Let me double check that.
I was stunned a little bit at the Charlotte Catholic crowd when they played yesterday at 4. Mm-hmm. The gym was empty. And it was just weird because you would have thought school let out at whatever, that the kids would hang around and like the students would be there. It was just a little like
It was an early game.
Yeah.
I mean,
they've been at school all day.
It was great for us.
They want
We
to go
love
home.
those
It
love
was
the early
awesome. I
games.
mean, listen, it was a busy time, but it was a great time.
But NCHSAA, if you want, at least for us, because we, have a bit more freedom. If you want coverage of all your games, the 4, 5, 6s for men's and women's, that's
a beautiful
chef's,
thing.
that's chef's kiss. We get. I mean, we hit 6 games.
Yeah, no, it makes our life
between the two of us.
It makes our life a lot easier and stuff like that. Okay, before we wrap it up, I want to throw this out there, and I'm going to throw it to you because you didn't know we were going to talk about it, but I just do want to talk football for a second.
Of course.
Indy's games to start the year.
Yeah.
Independence.
Yeah. I mean,
Did Coach McFadden put it out?
Coach McFadden put it out because, of course, he's gonna. You have Gaffney, you have Charlotte Christian.
That is the gauntlet of like.
You have.
It was insane.
And so they put out, and we can talk about it actually.
And I mean, I know they haven't finalized all the stuff yet, have
so
they?
they put out the final draft.
Right.
So whether that being the final draft, meaning they're not going to make any more changes,
Right.
or that's their final draft, and then they're going to finalize it.
the final draft.
But as it looks right now, the reason Independence has that, I mean, they need it because right now they sit. You're 8A, 7A for Charlotte.
Right.
You have Chambers, Mallard Creek, West Charlotte,
Right.
Butler, Indy, North Mech. That's
God.
one conference.
That's a conference.
Butler, Indy, North Mech are all 7A. And then the rest of the teams above, Chambers, Mallard Creek, West Charlotte are all 8A. Which is funny. West Charlotte, is 3A.
Right.
Now
they've leapfrog Indy.
Indy and Butler, and North Mech was sitting there. So then your next conference is in the 8A, Garinger, Huff, Myers Park, South Mech, with 7A's Hopewell and West Mech. So the Huff and Myers Park could be interesting. You hope there can be some competition there.
Right.
And there hasn't been a lot of changes in these. These have been pretty stagnant throughout, except for the first draft split. There was 2 major conferences for 8A, 7A. Now that's split down to 3.
Okay.
For 8A, 7A. So then your last 8A, 7A is Audrey Kell, East Mech, Palisades, Providence, and then Ballantyne and Rocky River in the 7A. Those last 2. Then you go to this is a really interesting one. 7A, 6A. So our area for whatever reason doesn't have any full class conferences.
that are one
that are one
A-
that are just
one like
yeah.
it's either 8A and 7A or 7A 6A.
Yep.
But no, just 8A.
No, just 8A.
Percent.
The
Wild.
the Triangle had a couple.
Okay.
Greensboro, I think, had one, but our area none doing.
Okay.
And they do it by population size at the school.
Right.
So this conference for 7A, 6A is Cuthbertson, Marvin Ridge, Porter Ridge, Weddington, and then in 6A, Charlotte Catholic, Piedmont, and Sun Valley.
Wow.
So now you basically just throw Catholic into that conference.
Right.
Then you go the next one, 7A.
That's interesting though for Catholic to make that move. It's kind of a weird move.
Geographically is very odd.
It's bizarre.
The next one, 7A, 6A, Ale Brown, Cox Mill, Hickory Ridge, West Cabarrus. Then Berry Academy, Central Cabarrus, Harding, and Olympic. Is that 8A, 7A?
Geographically, these are weird.
They are. The next one, 7A, 6A. 7A, Davie County, Lake Norman, Mooresville, South Iredell, Then 6A, North Iredell, and Statesville.
All right.
Now, then you hit 6A. This one's pretty on point. I think it's almost the exact same conference from last year. Ashbrook and Kings Mountain in 7A.
Okay.
Now it's a split the conference, though. Crest, Forest View, Hunter Huss, North Gaston, South Point are all in 5A.
Oh, that's a good conference.
The interesting part is going to be, you said last year, some of the conferences with split only get one automatic bid per class.
Right.
Their 8A1 gets an automatic bid. Their 7A1 gets an automatic bid. Like Piedmont would always make the playoffs because in that conference, they were the lower.
Oh.
So now it's going to be interesting. Because Lake Norman, because there's two classes, North Iredell and Statesville, will they get a bid? But then will that mean that only Lake Norman or Mooresville will go?
Right.
Just one of them.
I don't know. That's wild.
That it's going to be interesting. You go down farther, 5A, 4A. You see Concord, East Rowan, J.M. Robinson, Jesse Carson, Northwest Cabarrus, West Rowan, and then in the 4A, Salisbury and South Rowan in that same conference. So now Salisbury will be playing conference games against J.M. Robinson.
Wow.
There's even ones with 3 classes in them. There's a 4A, 3A, 2A.
What?
There's a 4A, 3A, 2A, Lincoln Charter, Lake Norman Charter in the 4A,
Okay.
Pine Lake Prep in the 3A, then Christ the King, Corvian, Community School of Davidson, Bradford Prep, and Langtree all in the 2A in the same conference.
Wow. So 3 different divisions. But
Yep.
One conference.
I'll give you another one. There's a 3A or 4A, 3A, 2A is Burns, East Gaston, and Stuart Kramer in the 4A. Then Bessemer City, Lincolnton, Shelby, and West Lincoln in the 3A. And then Cherryville and Highland Tech in the 2A, all in the same conference. Now Lincolnton and Maiden aren't in the same conference anymore. You split that up. And then there's a couple other ones, East Lincoln, Hickory, and North Lincoln are all going to be in the same conference. They're all in the 5A.
Right.
So
it'll be interesting how they figure it all out.
it will be very, very interesting. Some
Especially come playoff time.
some move up, some move down. Going from 4A to 8A is an aggressive split.
Yeah, I don't get that.
You're going to have, I think, 32 teams.
Because really, West Charlotte was a 3A.
West Charlotte was a 3A up to 8A.
Right.
That's
but
got to
they
be the
weren't
biggest
4A. I mean, I could see going like 4A to the 8A. That makes sense. But when you go from 3 to 8,
and you leapfrog teams that were in the 4A and now go down to 7A like Butler, Independence, North Meck.
That's crazy. That's wild.
But
it is what it is.
I'll be interested to see how they do the state tournaments and how they're going to do.
How are you going to seed them and how you're going to invite? Like, how does that all play out?
And then when is your state championships? You're going to have 8 games between UNC Chapel Hill, NC State Stadium, and do you split out and go, okay, we're gonna have one game at Memorial Stadium, we're gonna have one game at Jerry Richardson Stadium, we're gonna have one game at Davidson Stadium. How do you do
I mean,
that?
you could do. I mean, I guess you could do
Saturday, 4 games Saturday, 4 games Sunday.
Well, you could do NC State
or 4 games
UNC and Duke
potentially, yeah. But that's gonna be.
Or you bring it to Bank of America Stadium, you do it over 3 days.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, wow.
But you talked about Indy. I believe they have Gaffney. They have Charlotte Christian. They liked that game last year. They have Palisades, I want to say.
Yeah.
I think Huff.
I think it was Huff.
Let me look real quick.
I was trying to figure out what Coach McFadden put out. Because when we saw the tweet, it was like
he might have taken it down. Knowing him.
But that's like some crazy stuff.
I think he did take it down.
Oh, did he?
Oh, no, here it is. Week 1, Gaffney. Week 2, Huff. On the road at Gaffney, hosting Huff, hosting Charlotte Christian, hosting Lake Norman.
What?
And then on the road at Palisades. And then
you've still got your
they would have splitting however many home getaway games. Chambers, Mallard Creek, West Charlotte, Butler, North Mac. That's your schedule for Independence. And then there's been some, discrepancies because Huff will play Myers Park, South Mac, Hopewell, West Mac, Garinger.
Yeah.
Be that,
I mean, Indy's that is a gauntlet.
And then Cuthbertson, then you get Weddington has to play Porter Ridge, Marvin Ridge, Cuthbertson, Catholic, Sun Valley. That's their conference schedule. So I'm putting in early bid for hoping that Independence and Gaffney is one of the Keep Pounding Classic games.
It should be.
I mean, that's North Carolina, South Carolina.
It
That's a
should be.
huge game. Gaffney had a really good year. Independence had a really good year. Both, missed state made deep runs in the playoffs.
Right.
Those should be incredible games. So can't wait for that to start up. We've got basketball. Of course, we got to finish up before we get to that point.
Right.
So excited to see those games.
And then we'll get you going on the spring sports.
Yep.
Some great baseball, softball around. I think there's soccer.
Yep.
So we'll do all that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, hey, everybody take a deep breath. It is going to be a busy next 4 days with all the basketball. We'll keep you up to date as much as we can. Jack will keep it up more than I am. But that's what we do here. So, hey, thanks for joining us. Make sure wherever you check out your podcast that you like, subscribe, comment. We love to keep in touch with you guys. Until then, have a great rest of your weekend, and we will talk to you next week right here on Game On, a podcast, a part of the Bay Hackle Sports Network. We can call it network,
Yeah,
right?
why not?
Okay. Y'all have a great week.